part of this project, and so excited to be part of this really important project. And I'm going to introduce the NWPA staff. So while folks are walking, you can chat with them, ask them questions, and then Kate's going to, Kate Wildfire is going to introduce her team as well, so you know more folks you can chat with on the way up. First, I want to point out Mark Brown, right there, our executive officer.
KPIX last night.
Didn't even mention that he was on TV. All right. Local celebrity. And then we've got Stephen Peters, Ned Briggs, we've got Jacob Jadman, and Josh Hampshire over here. So they're all part of the NWPA team and can help talk about the project as we're walking up. Kate, why don't you introduce your team as well?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Kate Anderson. I'm with Wildfire. I'm the wildfire prevention program manager at this point. Thank you all for coming. There's so many familiar faces, so many partners here. It's really good, especially on a sunny day, breaking the rain, to get to talk about our work and where we're really going to start this project. It's a big undertaking and we're taking small chunks. So it's really I'm really happy to have you all around to start that journey with us. I do want to introduce our wildfire mitigation team. Got everyone in presence today. Our team is primarily focused on the defensible space side of our program. Defensible space inspectors, wildfire mitigation specialists, and vegetation management specialists. And a big portion of our work is really starting from home. And so I really want to emphasize that while this project is a larger landscape approach, it's in coordination with everything we do on the defensible space side. It all works together in a really holistic strategy.
Make room for the vehicle, please.
What's that?
We gotta turn around. We're okay.
Okay, perfect. So on our way up, anything related to defensible space, our team's here. I know other agencies, I see Novato as well. Anything related to defensible space, we're here to answer questions as well.
And then, yeah, and then I'd also love to point out some project partners who are here as well and who might be able to speak to the project as we're walking up and throughout the morning here. Town of San Anselmo folks, do you mind raising your hand? Awesome. We have a lot of you. Thank you so much for coming today. Really important partner. Feel free to jump in and ask some questions. We'll do a quick round of introductions at the top, but I don't want to hang out here for too long. Marin County Parks and Space folks. Fabulous. Thank you. Ross Valley Fire. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. And we've got a couple of board members here. Would you mind? We've got Julie McMillan and Bruce Goines. Thank you. And we've got many of our environmental partners here. We have Belle Cole here, who's the head of our ecologically sound practices partnership, and a really important partner with everything we're doing in our whole environmental compliance program.
Woo woo! Love you, Bill.
Part of this project that I am forgetting, please raise your hand. You have really great partners. Mount Tam Cemetery, Cedars of Marin, those are additional partners on this project. So I think what we'll do now is start walking and driving. So raise your hands again if you have vans, and if you would like a ride and are comfortable walking up the hill, please guys here. Otherwise, we're going to start walking up. We'll have folks at the turn to join at the last minute. Make sure your extra walk down the scenic route and then coming back. Appreciate that. I think what we're going to do right now is take a moment. We'd love to see who's here with us. So if you can very briefly say who you are and if you're affiliated with an agency or organization, that would be great to know. We'll keep it like one sentence and then, have the hook. So there's plenty of time to chat later. But let's go around, do a quick round of introductions. If you're affiliated with the project, either a consultant or an agency, please let everybody know because you're a great resource for questions and answers afterwards. And then we'll talk a little bit about the project, give an overview, and get into the details. So I think, you know me, Ann Krelog, Planning and Program Manager with MWPA, and thrilled to have all of you guys here. This is a really important project, and I'm so glad to be talking about it today. Kate, why don't you go next, and then maybe we go in this direction.
Again, Kate Anderson, Wildfire. I've been kind of the coordinator for this project and bringing everyone along and guiding the way.
Oh, do you want to go? It's up here.
We're introducing, just a
Oh,
sentence
okay.
introducing.
Yeah, I'm Belle Cole, and I've been fortunate to be part of creating the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership, and many of you are here today, and so glad. And so we promote and pay attention and have our members provide guidance for these major projects of NWPA. So it's a pleasure to be here, and welcome everybody.
I'm Phil Sisson. I'm an immediate neighbor of the cemetery, so I have a vested interest. I'm also a Scotch Broom vigilante.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm a vegetation management specialist with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority.
Good morning. My name is Ted Briggs. I'm also a vegetation management specialist with Marin Wildfire, and this is one of the projects that I'm working on. Good morning, Bruce Goins. I'm two-term president of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. I'm on the steering committee for ESP, and biomass utilization team. I'm a licensed professional forester, and I'm a director of Nevada Fire Protection District.
I'm A.J. Shaw, San Anselmo Public Works.
Jerry Healy, San Anselmo Public Works. Matthew Ferrer, San Anselmo Public Works.
Will Messinger, also San Anselmo Public Works. Tom Bautista, San Anselmo Public Works.
One more time.
I'm Sean Condry, San Anselmo Public Works and Building Director, part of the MWPA program here today. And so if you have any questions related to the town piece as it's coming in the future, you can forward questions to me or some of my engineers maybe who I'll be bringing up to speed. We actually have technically 2 brand new engineers, so, which is much needed.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Neal with Nevada Fire Protection District. I'm the vegetation management specialist.
I'm Sarah Laverton. I'm also with Nevada Fire and the Vegetation Management Program Manager.
Kyle Nichols, I'm one of the wildfire mitigation specialists with Nevada Fire. Jim McDougall, wildfire mitigation specialist with Nevada Fire.
Dan Russo, same thing as them.
Ditto.
I'm Julie McMillan. I'm on the Rosstown Council. I'm the board president of MWPA. I'm also a Firewise leader in our neighborhood, and I'm a master gardener.
I'm Erica Freeman. I'm with San Anselmo, and I'm the building.
Scott Schneider, San Anselmo Assistant Public Works Director.
Jason Ankara, Fire Inspector for Southern Marin Fire District.
Cedric Cadona, Defensible Space Inspector with the City of Santa Fe.
Kathleen Cutter, Wildfire Mitigation Specialist, lead for 5 different fire agencies here for this country.
Connor Cummings, Restoration Project Manager at WRA Landscape Restoration. Parent company is WRA Environmental Consulting. I'm Nate Clark with Marin County Parks and the Biodiversity State Coordinator. Morning, Jim Chaka, Superintendent, Marin County Parks.
Joe Aiello, San Rafael Fire, Defensible Space Inspector.
Colin Trotter, Senior Vegetation Management Specialist for San Rafael.
Joe Boyden, AmeriCorps Fellow with the San Rafael Fire Department.
Adina Dornan, fellow as well at the San Rafael Fire Department.
Justin Gogomelo, Wildfire Mitigation Specialist with San Rafael Fire.
Simon Wright, Wildfire Mitigation Specialist for San Rafael Fire.
Morning, everyone. Carl Sanders, Marin Water, Program Manager, Fire Fuel, Veg Management, 20,000 acres over there.
I am Lucy Dilworth. I'm a Firewise leader and a master gardener and very interested in fire.
I'm Tina with Lammers, a neighbor who's very interested and concerned about what's happening. And I hear that the postcards go out late. Last time we got the postcard the day before the event that was canceled. and we have not received one this time. So I think that the fact that the neighborhood is not represented, I don't feel that that's because they aren't interested. I think that maybe the communication to them is not quite, you know, I mean, if I got it today in the mail, I wouldn't be able to drop everything. I mean, I'm lucky, but other people, you know, they need like a week's notice at least. So that might be something just to look at, because I don't think the lack of local people is because there's not an interest.
Yeah, thank you for that. And there's a sign-in sheet going around right now, so anybody who puts their email address on there will get emails about future events. So we will be in touch.
Josh Hampshire. I'm live streaming this to make this a little bit more accessible, so that's the camera that's pointing at all of you guys. Grant specialist with Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority.
Rob Ashnon, Ross Valley Fire Department.
Steve Peters, Vegetation Management Specialist with Marin Wildfire.
Renee Voss, I'm the Executive Director of the Western Alliance for Nature, which owns 35 acres adjacent to San Rafael Open Space. I'm also on the town's San Anselmo Open Space Committee as a member, and I live right over there. Mark Brown, Executive Officer, and often walk in the wrong direction, so don't follow me. Gary Draper, neighbor, interested in this project. And it's almost done.
Pat Randolph, I'm on the Citizens Oversight Committee for the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. I'm also a Firewise leader and a UCA Marin Master Gardener.
I am Sophia. I am with the University of California Cooperative Extension down in Marin. Title is Fire Smart Landscaping Science Coordinator and help with outreach and education with that subject in this one.
Sarah Zaragoza with San Rafael Fire, bilingual wildfire risk reduction.
Lynette Thompson, San Rafael Fire, defensible space inspector.
I'm Charles Dilworth. I'm a neighbor. It seems to me if you want to get more neighbors, you might do one on the weekend because you need working people, but that's tough for staff. So we're putting that out there.
Quinn Gardner, I'm the Deputy Director of Emergency Management for the City of San Rafael and all things wildfire.
Good morning. I'm Bill Long. I'm the chair of Marin Open Space Trust, sometimes known as MOST.
I'm Stephen Keys, live in Fairfax, who's the founder of the Cascade Canyon Firewise community, and I'm the civil grand jury that recommended the creation of WPA with Pat and Lucy. Yeah. And have had the pleasure of knowing many of the people who are here and watching you all do great work. Thank you.
I'm Barbara Olson. I live on Ray Court, right next to the cemetery, and on the Firewise Committee for that area. And I walk through here most days when I can, and I know my way, so I let it.
I'm Lake Capello. I work for Panorama. We did the CEQA document for this project, and we're our consultants to the MWPA.
So we're going to take a minute. I'm going to talk a little bit about the MWPA and who we are and what we do. Then I'm going to ask Mark, our executive officer, if I forgot anything and if there's stuff he wants to add. Then we're going to ask Jill to talk a little bit about our partnership with our environmental stakeholders, and then we'll turn it over to Kate to talk more about the project. And I'm going to ask Ted Briggs here to talk a little bit about his role and some of how we're collaborating with all of our project partners. We've got a lot of folks with a lot of knowledge here today, so I want to make sure, I mean, we have a ton of experts in various arenas here today, so if you have contributions, please pipe up. We love to hear it.
So before you get started,
yeah.
I'd like to hand these things out.
That sounds great. We have a lot of handouts, either keep or pass along and share, including some very fancy laminated project maps, which we'll pass around for you to share with your neighbors and then give back at some point.
So everything I'm going to hand out to be kept. We made 30 brochures thinking that that was going to be enough. Clearly that's not. That's a good problem to have. So find a neighbor, share these handouts, and then there are 4 or 5 also handouts that can be kept. with some aerial photography of the site to show how markedly different the vegetation on the ground here is from the surrounding areas. So again, if you're interested in seeing some aerial photography of this and how it's different, you know, you're happy to take one, but once it's all passed out, I might ask you to raise your hand if you have the maps. Other people might crowd around you if they're interested. Okay?
Can they be put up on the website?
Well, yeah. So it's a good point. So there is a lot of information about this project on our website already, and you're very welcome to go out to the website and take a look. If you have any follow-up questions, you're always welcome to reach out, and we'll see what we can do to help provide answers to your questions. Thank you.
And I would just add that this is the second field trip we've hosted in this location, and there will be many more that will be working in this area for a very long time. Anything else you want to say, Craig?
Oh, that's it for now. That's it for now.
Do you mind if I just peer with the camera over your shoulder for the 3 people watching? Thank you.
I always want to take an opportunity like this to just mention who the MWPA is. A lot of us know who the MWPA is, but there's also, always a handful of folks who are kind of iffy on it. So I want to make sure to talk about who we are. The Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority came into being because of all of you guys, because of voters of Marin who voted for Measure C in 2020 and voted to tax themselves because you're taking wildfire prevention and wildfire resilience seriously. So as a resident of Sonoma County and Santa Rosa, who has evacuated multiple times, thank you for taking this on and prioritizing this and putting your money where your mouth is. That is the only reason why large projects like this that include multiple jurisdictions can possibly happen. In Santa Rosa, where I live, the economic loss from the Tubbs fire alone was about $1.2 billion, plus another $100 million in fire suppression costs. So 10 cents per developed square foot as a parcel tax seems like a good deal to me in Sonoma County, and I'm looking for Sonoma County to do something similar because I think it's a really good investment. We talk a lot about vegetation management because it gets a lot of attention. It takes a lot of experts to do stuff like this. It's very visible on the landscape. That's only one piece of what we do. It's part of a larger system, a systems kind of approach to wildfire resilience. So behind the scenes, what you don't always see is inspectors going out and inspecting homes. 30,000 inspections every year. Go figure out how to make our homes and our yards more ember resistant. If you are an inspector, can you raise your hands? Anybody? Yeah. So we have a whole bunch of folks here who are involved in that program and can answer some questions for you. We also have a grant program to help residents pay for some of those improvements, the discoveries that come up during those inspections. We want to help residents pay for some of that work. So we have a grants specialist here, if you can raise your hand, who's involved in that program. It's a really key part of what we do. We give a lot of money back to the community to make your homes safer and your yards safer. Stay tuned. That program is evolving all the time with new ideas and new thoughts about how to make it more efficient, really put money where it's going to make the most difference. We also
So how do somebody find Steve, Jesse, so go into our Facebook page.
well, looking at our roadmap. What are the factors that
You trying to send it to someone? Yeah, bam. Go to Marin Wildfire on Facebook, and you should be able to pop in pretty easy.
Member agencies, County Department of Public Works, the roads crews, if you're opening up an intersection, are there improvements you can make for, during some other road improvement project that would make it also easier to manage during a wildfire evacuation? Let's see, what else do we do? Public education. We partner with a lot of folks, especially our local Fire Safe Council, which you're aware of, Fire Safe Marin, and others, to get the word out and to really try to reach populations that are not always part of the conversation. And so we're working actively right now with some folks to really understand how to do that better and improve all that messaging.
I think they're just, it's yours.
So, and then in terms of vegetation management, what we generally do is projects that are very specifically located strategically. So
Heavy is the hand that holds the map. Heavy is the hand that holds the map.
And wildlands, because that's where you want to reduce fire behavior, so that fire crews can come in and there's some sort of chance to stop a wildfire from entering the community. This is a different approach. This is really interesting. This is more like a polygon on a map in a strategic location because of the fuels and because of the location, the topography, the wind direction, and how fire would move in this landscape and move from one part of Marin to another. So that's a really key component of this project, and other folks are going to talk about that a little bit more today. MWPA was very active in managing the environmental compliance, all the studies, all the experts in this for this project and for all of our big core projects with partners like Panorama. We work tirelessly to try to hear from the community what the concerns are and make sure to build those into our projects. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and invite Belle to talk about that in a minute. First, I want to, after the noise, ask Mark to talk a little bit and see if there's anything else I left out.
Because there is not a single silver bullet to solve the wildfire problem. And so we have to address all of those. We can't just focus on one piece. So with that long list of items that Ann listed, you can see that we are really following that systems approach. However, as much money as we have, it's not enough to get it all done at once. So we have to be very strategic about that approach. And I'll share some of the science and some of the experience behind some of these projects, and specifically this project and why this project is so important. And we really don't want the MWPA to be seen as someone who hates, or an agency that hates eucalyptus trees and thinks that all eucalyptus trees must be banned. There are places where eucalyptus trees are hazardous for the fire environment, and it has to do with the location, and this location is one of those spots. And there's several reasons: the terrain, and also how it's located between two different communities, and the fire history that is in this area. If you look back through the fire history of Marin County, this is one of the spots that gets the most fires. And if you want to predict the future in wildfire, look at the past. The 60s had a wildfire in here where embers from the eucalyptus trees were landing on Bald Hill. The 70s, when I got hired at Marin County Fire, our headquarters was covered by the Swords Park fire, the fire that ripped through here in the 70s. That's how big of a fire it was. In 2006, I was an incident commander of a fire that was over there, and it was 20-acre fire on an average day that spotted in the grass below Ridgewood. Fortunately, we had tankers overhead that could drop on the spot fire before it ever impacted homes. And then we had a fire right there. You probably saw the impacts over there in 2022. They ended up being a 2-day problem because of how thick the stuff is. So we have the problem of an average wind day, but then if we get into a north wind day or a diablo wind day, we can literally have a fire that starts at the bottom of the cemetery, which they normally start at, and then run uphill against the wind, have enough energy to lift this burning into the air and get into the prevailing wind and start landing 3/4 to 3 miles downwind. And so now we have thousands of ignitions from one fire on a north wind day. That's why this spot is so strategic for us. And then just to talk a little bit about the strategy that we're using outside of this project, but inclusive of this project, we're taking all of our defensible space information and we're actually modeling the risk each individual parcel has to itself, and then we can aggregate for the community. So based on the defensible space work that's being done, the home hardening, we can start modeling how ignitable those properties are, and it allows us to know where we should do our work. Then we're also modeling where we're doing our shaded fuel breaks, so we know what type of fire reduction that we can create for our work. We also know where the most dangerous places are, so we can focus our work there first. And it's also telling us what our return intervals for the work should be, so that we can make sure that we stay on top of it. And then we're doing that same type of modeling for projects like this. I know Jacob and his team were out here doing some amazing work. I can't describe it right. Jacob can. That's why we hire people that know how to do this stuff, because I don't. But so we have the whole systems approach with the team. We hire a very diverse team with lots of different backgrounds, so we can bring it all together for that system approach. Back to you.
Thanks for that. I want to also introduce Jacob and Ted. I think actually we'll invite you guys to say a few words a little further up so that we're not in this beautiful location for too long. But I do want to make sure that Belle has a couple minutes because our partnership with Belle and the ESG partnership has been a very big part of who we are and how we form, how we built our environmental compliance program, and all of that. Belle, do you mind saying a couple words?
No, I'll say a few words and thank you. So ESP partnership, ecologically sound practices, a mouthful, but ESP is good. We actually got started before Measure 2 was passed, and some of us have been working for the goals of MWPA and also for the goals of environmentalists and climate specialists who really wanted to make sure that this project followed the guidelines and the needs of these communities and of these concerns that are always out there. So the first thing that we did as a group was to create a set of practices. We call them now guidelines, and they cover vegetation management, they cover carbon management, and they cover defensible space. And we spent a couple of years developing those. They are now on the books, and they have been endorsed by the, and by the way, the membership is broadly fire professionals. Anybody in the fire area, it's people in every environmental and climate area. Of what I've mentioned, there are about 100 people, but basically 20 or 30 who have been very active in this. And then the other major thing we do is put on forums to enlighten the whole community, especially ourselves, about all these things that are developing. And we're having one, I just will mention, on March 12th. And Mark Brown, there he is speaking on the subject of why the wildfires have been so destructive in Maui and in Canada, and also about the implications for Marin, and also just about climate change in general. So any of you who are not a part of this, if I'll look at the list and see, we have every conceivable kind of specialist, and they also provide very good advice to us on many of the projects that are taking place. So thank you very much. And also, other thing we're doing is looking at frontiers of, we have a program to train and to help fire professionals at the early stages. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to Kate here, who's going to talk more about the project, and then we'll talk about
I'll keep this brief. You know, I'm itching to start walking. So I want to thank you all again for being here. We got a really good overview of why this project came to be, why this location, just how integral it is to the public safety of San Rafael, of Plain and Selmo, and up and over the ridge, the other part of San Rafael, the neighborhood of Terra Linda. So it's kind of wedged in between a lot of developed areas. And as we walked up, I really wanted everyone to kind of feel how dense this area is and get to see really what conditions we're looking at to improve. The last couple field trips that we've done, one publicly and then a lot of planning visits with our partners, started up on the top of that ridge. And so I just wanted to start here to get a sense of how far this project spans to the north. And then as we walk around, we're going to see just how far it spans to the south. So just to get a sense of the scale of what we're doing, this is not what we've done before with our more linear fuel breaks along the edges of communities, but really looking at what a larger project is going to take. And the real point of today, what we're focusing on, and If you get the map, when it comes around to you, we're in the middle of that blue polygon. So that blue area is really where we want to start chipping away at what this project is going to take. Because this project is so complex, it's the planning and the partner coordination and all the land management objectives that we are aiming to meet, from Marin County Parks to Town and Anselmo to the cemetery. They have very unique management needs. We're in the middle of an active cemetery. We need to take all those into account to create a project that meets all of our public safety and wildfire mitigation goals, but also meets the unique objectives of all of our partners here, which has taken multiple years to get it right. And seen on this map, we have the entirety of the project is 159 acres, which is a lot to take on all at once, both from the actual implementation and the oversight and the supervision, but financially, that's a lot to take on all at once. And so the idea for this fiscal year, now that we're done with our planning, our CEQA has been approved, and we're moving forward, we're focusing on 10-acre parcel, or 10-acre portion of the project. We selected this site, one, because it's got varying densities of the eucalyptus, from very dense, as you're going to see right behind you all, into more moderately dense, a little different vegetation types as we make our loop. So we've got the variety of the vegetation. We've got really good access. This was also chosen because there's roads and trails going through the whole portion. And geologically, it's probably the simplest part of the project. So all those combined really makes a pretty easy, not easy, it's simple on paper. And part of this pilot is to really see what this project is going to take to scale it up, how much money we're going to need, the coordination we're going to need between partners, and all of that. So I'd like to get walking. We're going to take a quick tour around kind of top knob here. We'll stop at various points to talk about different vegetation. Around the corner, we've also flagged a few different trees to really calibrate our eyes to what's going to be removed and what will be retained in this first portion of the project. So I'd like you all to join me. We'll start right around the corner.
Yeah. Limber up.
If you have any questions, you can ask at various points or along the way.
Well, I was walking towards the fire.
If you want to see a better version of the map than the one that I briefly showed, you can go to our website, marinwildfire.org, navigate to projects, and either projects by zone or projects by goal. And if you go by zone, you'll find this in both the central and the San Rafael zone, titled San Rafael San Anselmo Fuel Reduction Zone. And then if you go by goal, it'll be under vegetation management, and then under the section for central or San Rafael.
I also really like this loop because it touches on just about every land ownership and kind of all the situations we'll be experiencing as we progress with the project. And so I wanted to stop here, one, to just see how close we are to the rest of Marin. And just focusing on eucalyptus specifically, we've seen all the down material as we're walking. There's bark everywhere. If we look at all the trees, it's shedding constantly. And all that accumulated bark in a surface fire is what's going to catch and progress that fire. But it's also, if it gets airborne and thrown with wind, these pieces are going to be our ember brands. Pretty much going this way in a Diablo wind scenario. So I just wanted to see where we are within this project, the scale of how close we are to the rest of Marin, which is pretty vulnerable. But now that we're overlooking San Anselmo, I really wanted to focus on the unique management objectives and pieces that
Requirements of San Anselmo.
The requirements of San Anselmo.
Yeah. It actually is a great place too, because I don't know how many are familiar with the Memorial Ridge Trail. It's a 2-mile loop that actually is standing on it right now, and it goes through town property, it goes through Marin County open space. The town of San Anselmo is responsible for maintaining. It actually comes up right here on about 100 steps, and then goes down, and then goes through side by side. So it's kind of like a combination of town property and county property. And it's a great trail. I've never been on it. I highly recommend it. I go on it almost every day. But with the trees and everything in San Anselmo, unfortunately, we have a few more requirements that make it a little bit more difficult. So I know part of this program is to remove eucalyptus up to 10 inches in diameter. In San Anselmo, we have a code, an ordinance that basically says you can only remove up to 7 inches. Any tree basically is protected on undeveloped property if it's over 7 inches, any tree. Doesn't matter if it's a nuisance tree. We do have nuisance trees, but the way our code is written, on undeveloped property, any tree over 7 inches is protected, which doesn't mean we can't cut them down, but we have to go through a process where we'll do a neighborhood notification. So if you live around here, you do like a 300-foot radius, and then if nobody has any concerns, we can approve up to 10 inches. And if someone has a concern, we might have to hold a hearing and go through that process. In addition, we don't allow herbicides or pesticides, and there is a process for that. Unfortunately, I'm also the integrated pest manager, so there's a process that we have to go through that too, which I think Tom, correct me, I think we have to go through council, use specific types of herbicides or pesticides. Typically, we don't use anything just because it's easier, but I think in this case it's probably important to, so that these trees don't come back. So we'll be going through that process probably over the next 6 months. And if you have questions, you can email me or Tom. But if anybody has questions now, I can answer them.
Is it the same as what was used up on the ridge up here when they cleared things off? Is that the same pesticides that they use up on the Terralinda?
I don't know if that's not a
Okay.
Yeah.
No one.
Marin County Parks is somewhere. If you answer that.
I can answer
Jim, do you want to speak to that?
questions. Those the ones that we're thinking about. Haven't decided
I'm not
yet,
sure
though.
exactly which project she's talking about or when that was at, but we can connect. I can tell you. But I mean, one of the common herbicides for eucalyptus stump treatment is Garlon, which is triclopyr. It probably was that.
Yeah, I think
Much
that's what
more
the sign said,
specifically.
yeah.
And Jean, that's what we'll be using in all the projects as well.
You go through the notification process, you do 300 feet, and then I object, which I won't do. What's the process then? Because I lived in San Francisco for years, and discretionary review where neighbors could basically stop projects.
I know San Francisco very well, yeah.
So I'm wondering if it's analogous to that.
It is in theory. I can tell you I've been doing this for 15 years and have approved or denied hundreds, if not thousands of trees. And some people think I'm the Lorax or the anti-Lorax, depending on who you talk to. But I've only had maybe 10 hearings in 15 years. So I usually try to look for consensus or compromise and get people to understand. Like if I do get concerns or complaints, whether it be protecting the tree or removing the tree, I usually reach out to everybody and try to come to some consensus. So I think there is a process to move forward, and even my decision ultimately, if I make a decision, anything I decide pretty much can be appealed to council if someone disagrees. But I think there is broad community support for this. I like to hope there is, but we'll see.
I wonder whether that community support also includes the town council.
I can't speak for every individual council member. I would like to think so, and I believe so that they know that we're doing this. We also have an open space committee, which actually Renee is on the open space committee, so we'll probably be bringing this to the open space committee too, and maybe a few other committees like planning and stuff like that. We try to make it as public and open as possible. Yes.
One question I have is, have there been other efforts in the past to deal with what you're doing now? Deciding how to reduce fire efforts, and also how reduce the trees?
In this specific project
Yes,
area?
yeah, in this area. Is this the first time that you're doing this, or has this happened before?
So it's a great question, and probably should have covered kind of the management history of this area. Marin County Parks up on their ridge, that's where we did our last public field trip. They've been maintaining that ridge very well over the last 20 years. And that's a really good reference condition for what we want to see in the rest of this project. So they've maintained very large trees, or the mature established trees, with really good spacing. And they're doing a lot of management of the smaller trees, pretty much everything, under 10 is kind of what we're doing as well. But they've also done understory management as well. And if they want to speak a little bit more to that, but they've made really good efforts on the top of the ridge. It's a pretty vulnerable spot. And we're going to try to continue that effort down into the cemetery. Their management includes a lot of the roadside maintenance. And I'm a little unfamiliar with San Anselmo's management history.
I'm not aware of a lot of trees coming out. We do take dead, dying, and dangerous trees out typically, whether they're in open space or on public roads. Both myself, the town manager, the fire chief, and the chief of police, in theory, can approve that. We do kind of have an agreement with open space in terms of if a tree is dead or dying or fallen, if it's not endangering any homes or paths or street, we typically will let it fall in place and leave it alone unless there's some hazard related to it. So.
And a follow-up to that, this is a question we've all been concerned about is the disposition of the trees, whether they're dead or not, whether it's a biomass issue. But, are you giving thought to how to deal with getting rid of the trees?
Yes. Belle, that's one of the biggest hurdles we have with this project. There's an incredible amount of trees here, an incredible amount of biomass, and disposing of that in a way that is economically feasible, that might provide a benefit back, but is also not leaving the project with a lot of down material is really important to us. At this point, we're exploring the newer technology, the air curtain burners, the biochar generation. Those are things that we're exploring and trying to figure out how to do them here on site. That might be challenging because of the space requirements, but that's what we're still looking into. At this point, we will be bringing most of the material out of the units. It will be chipped and hauled, it will be chipped and broadcast, and in some areas where we've consulted with Marin County Fire Department, we're looking at building burn piles to be burned at a later date. We're doing that in areas where the slopes are feasible enough to do that, where we'll have enough canopy gaps so that there's not a whole lot of risk with any torching. So we are looking at the on-site disposal the best we can, and that's an ongoing conversation and development as well.
Can I add something to that? Just because I think it's important. I might have spoken to you about this, Sam, before. There's a state mandate that every jurisdiction in the state of California has to procure wood chips and compost, and it gets a little bit ridiculous sometimes to the point like we're chipping, and then when it goes back out, comes back in. But we've been able to figure out that we can actually, like when we get our tree chipping company to chip, we can actually, as long as they charge us to dump the wood chips, we can use them, and it's cheaper than going and buying them somewhere. Like literally, imagine like cutting a tree down, setting it somewhere else to be chipped, and then buying the chips back. It's a little bit ridiculous. So we're trying to be a little bit more green about it, and that's something I think that NWPA should look at too with all the different jurisdictions. The way to get credit for something that was created.
Yeah, I'm really looking for those partnerships. There's so much biomass. It's going to take a lot of different methods to manage it. I want to note about pile burning. We've done pile burning on other projects as well, and typically what we've done is notify the neighbors, put up signage, and invite people to come and check it out because it's a really well-staffed event, and it's a really great demonstration of how
Let me know in the
safe pile
comments
burning
if you need me to
can be,
get closer to the
because
speakers.
there are a lot of people involved, a lot of firefighters involved. And so stay tuned if we do pile burning. snow and invite folks out to observe.
Kate, if I could just go back real quick and connect to the treatment work that Marin County Parks has done on the Ridgewood Fire. That fire that I was talking about is actually that purple area at the top of the map. We were able to hold, because of the treatment work and the conditions of those trees, we were able to hold the Ridgewood Fire Road with 2 engines. As the fire, a 20-acre fire was hitting that ridge and had the risk of going over to Terra Lynn, 2 engines held that road.
Any reason?
Because they were large, mature trees, the dead and down, the ladder fields were removed, fire intensity went way down, and it just took engines that are driving along with doing what we call pump and roll to hold the ridge road.
So I had a question about access, and there's great access up here in this pilot project, but when you get into the other areas, it's not really clear from the documents what access points are going to be used to haul and bringing out equipment. Can you talk a little about what your plans are for these more remote areas that don't have the roads?
Yeah. So we, for this pilot project, we've contracted with a licensed timber operator, a company that does a lot of larger scale forestry projects. So they're really adept at getting their equipment in and out, especially on pretty tight roads, residential roads, and they're quite maneuverable on the roads that we'll have within the project, both up in Marin County open space, but also within the cemetery. The actual equipment that will be used on site, most of it will be offloaded at the main landing area where we started this tour, and they'll be walked up. Most of it will be rubber tracked, so there's not a lot of impact to the roads and to the units where slope allows, where that equipment can get in. Is that
what about the areas where the slope does not allow it, and also where there's no roads?
So we're not building any new roads in this project, but our contractors, this is their bread and butter. They've got a lot of experience doing larger projects like this with limited access throughout the state. We'll be using trucked equipment where slopes allow. That's under 50% slope, and where the geologic conditions are stable enough to do so. We have a geologist who's been consulting with this project, and in the next couple of weeks she'll come out and flag the areas where equipment can and can't go, and where we're able to operate. Where equipment can't reach within the units, we'll be using other methods to use the existing roads to haul material out, whether that's through
cables and helicopters?
No helicopters.
Okay.
Don't have the budget for that. But no, we'll be using cables to make some.
Can you talk about, to this question about going into the wildland, moving material, track equipment, the monitoring that you put in place, baseline monitoring and monitoring post-project, what do you plan to monitor the consequences of your actions?
All right. So we as an agency are in the middle of developing a monitoring program for all NWPA projects, not just this particular one. Although this is kind of the testing ground for it, because it's the one that's moving fast. We just are in the process of completing our first pre-project baseline monitoring. Which means that we're going in to have a better understanding of our before conditions so that we can compare that to our after conditions and predict and understand how we've changed things, how we've reduced fire risk. A couple of the key metrics that we're looking at are surface fuel loading, native and non-native tree, native and non-native shrub and grass cover, understory, those sorts of things, as well as bird diversity, fuel moisture, soil moisture, a whole host of both fire and fuels metrics, but also ecological metrics. How we get funded through Measure C impacts our ability to monitor certain ecological metrics, because we have to justify it as a fire and fuels management and monitoring. It can't just be for the pure sake of ecological benefit. So we're looking at partnerships with UC Cooperative Extension, UC A&R, like organizations like that, Point Blue Conservation, to help understand our ecological outcomes, both before and after our projects. Right now we actually have acoustic bird monitors in the pilot project area to better understand our before snapshot of bird diversity. And we're going to be sending, like a couple weeks ago, myself and a couple of other people went out and we did our surface fuels monitoring so that we can understand how much this stuff contributes to fire risk. We have a good sample of our surface fuel loads based off of a modified Brown's transect, if anyone is familiar with that. And we'll also be looking at basal area and density, native and non-native cover. And then once as this pilot project moves through, we can come back and take another snapshot of after, so that we can understand how we've changed things. When we need to do retreatment is another big thing that we're looking at for our monitoring to understand our regrowth rates when vegetation is becoming hazardous again, how native and non-native plants recover. One of the things that's really interesting is like the science tells us overwhelmingly that mild and moderate amounts of disturbance on these landscapes are really good for biodiversity because they create more niches in the forest structure, they create more heterogeneity. And in this project in particular has a real opportunity to create a lot of heterogeneity in the forest structure and light availability, water availability. So we're really excited to see as we continue with this monitoring program how native species recover, what non-native species and invasive species will sort of be successful in this new environment, and then how we need to go back and retreat that. And how the more mature native trees, the oaks, the toyons, the bays that you can see scattered throughout the mid-story, how they sort of respond to that greater light and water availability. And there's a whole lot of ecological things that are really interesting and super interesting to me because my background's in fire ecology. But at the end of the day, the reason this monitoring program exists is so that we can better manage our fire and fuels risks, so that we can ensure, even after this project is done, that it will never be as bad as it is now. That our fuel level will never be as bad as it is now, and these projects are infrastructure. They're not just cut and leave. We have to maintain them. We have to keep up with them, and monitoring and the development of this monitoring program really helps us maintain this infrastructure.
I'd like to add just before questions, one thing I'd like to add to the good words that Jacob just mentioned. So there's been a lot of conversation about before and after, and it's 100% true. And let's talk about during. So during the project, there are a number of mitigation measures and constraints and requirements that are placed on these projects through an environmental review and compliance set of infrastructure at the state and the local level. All of that becomes part of the terms and conditions of how these projects are executed, and that is something that's monitored both by the member agency, so in this case it would be San Rafael Fire, and by MWPA throughout the execution of the project as well.
I just wanted to say that this is very opportune because on April 9th, Ann Krelak is going to give a talk, a forum, at the Ecologically Sound Practices meeting, and it's going to be on monitoring. So if you are interested, let us know. I think she'll build on some of the things you've talked about and more. So just wanted to make sure that you knew about this.
And I just want to add, we've got a lot of experts helping us monitor and model fire risk. And so the data we're collecting in our project areas and that we will be collecting in our project areas, we're also partnering with a GIS nonprofit actually who's helping us build our GIS program. All of the data that we're collecting will then inform our models and our risk models so that we can then take a look at how we're changing risk over the landscape and for our neighbors and reducing risk to homes in Marin. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. Great explanation on the rep and of the monitoring. I've not seen anything in print in regards. I know this is kind of an emerging discussion on what we're going to monitor, who's going to be involved, who's going to pay for it. And the MWP board has never seen that to date, because this is an emerging conversation. What do we need to monitor? What's the limit of Measure C's ability to pay for? Right? What are limitations, and then where do we need to reach out and find partners? So I'm wondering, when can we look at this in print and take a look at it and really fully understand? And I do believe that the MWPA board has yet to explore just exactly what that language means as far as how far we can go with our monitoring using Measure C funds. And it's incumbent upon us to be, as creative and inclusive as we possibly can be. So I'm looking forward to seeing this in print as a board member, past president, and others constituents outside the organization. We're pinging each other. So what's their sense of, and you're going to be speaking on April 9th, it sounds like, at ESP. Can we expect something in more detail at the April meeting, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk with Mark and our legal counsel and all our experts about what that should look like and what the process should look like. But yeah, I mean, we're working with our consultants or biologists to think through what's possible, what data to collect that actually means something, long term, and that isn't biting off more than we could chew for the next, years, many years. And so with this project, with it ready to go, we're playing around a little bit with methodology to see what actually, it's all fine and dandy to write it on paper and then to go out and actually implement. What does that actually look like? How much time does it take? How onerous is it? And so we've been playing in the field, figuring that out. And so then, with some kind of ground truthing, we're going to have a much better idea of what is possible. And then we need to have conversations about what is fundable under Measure C. And that's a big part of the conversation too. I mean, there's language around, stewarding our landscapes in an ecologically sustainable manner.
Right.
But there's also kind of the academic questions. Like, there's a long list of things we would love to know about every project site and every location, but maybe that's not what the taxpayers were looking for. So in some of those cases, we're looking at UC cooperative extension, and we're also thinking about monitoring fire fuels, not just in Marin, but in other neighboring counties too. So we've had conversations with them. We're thinking about reaching out to some of the local universities. I mean, this is kind of what I did for my master's thesis. So it might be a great master's thesis. So we're looking at different possibilities to partner outside of Measure C funding, to bring in grant money, things like that. So we're thinking big, but also trying to make it manageable. And we don't want to overburden our member agencies, who are sometimes understaffed, with kind of a big wish list of, hey, now you're going to collect 100 different, types of data on your project. So we're really thinking very conscientiously about how to make it work long term. So yeah, anything else on that? Oh,
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, the goal should be to make sure that the investment has the best return possible.
Yeah.
So to me, the monitoring goes hand in hand with the investment. So I could definitely make an argument to support the monitoring. But my question was more historical. What's the genesis of all these non-native eucalyptus? Why were they planted here in the first place? And there's very few areas in Marin that have eucalyptus. I'm just wondering, I know they came from Australia.
There's some history signs here too that we pull on the Memorial Ridge Trail that might go over some of that. I know it was the cemetery owner. He was a doctor. I think I'll just what I know. Maybe it's urban myth, but that he wanted to make this place look like the most renowned cemetery in the world, very Asian back in the day. I think there were 7 lakes at one point throughout here. And so the eucalyptus were an idea of his, and they even actually created a whole new trail that was coming up from San Anselmo instead of San Rafael, because he wanted a more like regal entry. but apparently the first time they went on a horse and cart on that trail, the guy thought he was going to die and fall off because it was so steep. So, but we do have the what is it called, the Red Hill Trail that goes up part of that now. But I don't know if you have more, but that's what I know.
7 lakes.
Yeah.
In these in these handful of papers that we've been
That's interesting.
This is aerial imagery from 1946, and you can see. So this blue dot is where we came in. That's the end of 5th Street or 5th Ave down there. One of the things that really sticks out to me here is just how distinct these triangular lines are. This is where the eucalyptus plantation was planted, and then surrounding it was a more like open woodland, oak woodland savanna grassland. So you can really see, like, as far back as we have this aerial imagery, this is the oldest one I could find, we have this incredibly dense, incredibly exotic, non-native, invasive eucalyptus plantation. They were planted in rows, they were planted on exactly on these property boundaries for aesthetic purposes. And because eucalyptus grows so fast and it has chemical properties that push other plants out of the soil, it has a remarkable ability to take over ecosystems. So that's exactly what happened. As these areas were defined, the eucalyptus had nowhere else to go, but it pushed in. And so it has gotten denser and denser and denser and denser. And so over the decades, you have increasingly more and more eucalyptus competing for the same amount of area, which makes them denser, smaller, less healthy, more at risk of fire. So this process has been going on for a really long time, and it is.
Just looking at these trees, could you give us some idea of what would come out and what would stay?
Yeah, so great points, and I do want to cover that at our next talking point. I flagged a few of the trees that will be coming out, and also flagged a few of the trees that'll be retained, so we can really see and kind of expand that to the rest of the project, and we can talk about the schedule, when work will be happening, what kind of work, and the type of equipment as well. And Stephen.
I've been nice, calm. First of all, MWPA has become a model for the state, country, people around the world. So you all are doing pioneering work, great work. Second is our Assemblyman, Damon Conley, has started an annual Ask the Constituents what laws should be proposed, what bills should be put in the hopper. You were talking about some state laws maybe conflicting with local and interfering and stuff. Do you have any plan, sometime during the year, maybe a slack season, if there exists one, to get together people who have confronted all of these myriad regulations and work with Damon to get an improved state one, but one that sort of takes care of all of the conflicts? So I don't, there's a question of whether you thought about it, but it's also a suggestion that you do it. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. I have a comment. The town of San Anselmo has a liaison to the MWPA board, Alexis Feynman, and it seems to me like, listening to what your tree ordinance is, that it's a good opportunity now to amend your tree ordinance, and maybe working through Alexis might be a way to deal with that.
We're already working on it as we speak. I just sent 5 emails last night about our tree ordinance. So, and Alexis has been on the forefront of that, and some of it's from environmental. Part of the problem we have is there's like this fire fuel reduction, and there's the climate stuff, right? And how those two intertwine, and you can almost say that maybe they're the same issue, right? We've got global warming, we got fire, you know, so it's how that all works together, and sometimes they don't work together, and that's the hard part. And maybe changing roles and talking about how we can change them. And a lot of our stuff was written a long time ago too.
So Bill has already volunteered the SPP
Yeah.
to forum and invite Damon to come in. So good, we get lots of work done here.
All right, let's go look at some trees. More trees.
Yes. I don't know. I can't see any. Where are they? Where are the trees? It's absurd.
That'll make sense.
Yeah. I mean, people tuning in live, look at that insanity.
Okay, so this is, yeah, this is where we'll stop, talk about some trees.
Oh, you've got them all flagged.
Yes. Yeah.
Go off, Forrester.
So our demonstrator. Right. Try to come in as close as we can. I should have flagged a couple more trees. I think we can see it from down here as well.
Just...
So I did have a group of 50 and 9 when I flagged this demonstration. And you don't all have to be on that side of the room.
Short people in front.
Alright, so I think we're as close as we're gonna get. I should have flagged a couple more. I didn't anticipate our crowd. But what I wanted to do, this is one of the thickest and most dense areas of the pilot project. Is really from this road down to the trail and to the bottom road here. And we've been talking a lot about the different phases of this project, the prescription that we have, but it's really hard to conceptualize what all the trees under 10 are going to look like. And so I really wanted to demonstrate here, a very small portion, kind of this clump, what a tree looks like that's under 10 inches and what a tree over 10 inches will look like. And to really calibrate our eye, I've made the basketball diameter analogy, but it's hard to put into a tree. So what we've done, everything flagged in the orange and black are trees under 10 inches that we're going to remove. And the couple trees in pink here, one is right at 10 inches and one's about 13 inches. And to me, that's pretty hard to conceptualize. If I didn't know and I didn't measure how big that tree was, to be able to essentially figure out and conceptualize what a first phase of removing trees under 10 is going to look like. So if we can just try to visualize what's here, try to calibrate our eye, and expand that to the rest of this area, we can see pretty quickly that most of the trees are going to be removed, leaving a couple larger stems with pretty open canopy. And that's the primary goal, and I think really touches on what Jacob was just talking about, which is the infill of these trees. Much like the city of San Rafael, and we have our defined boundaries, and we've been building in. And that's exactly what has happened here. And with that expansive and really fast growth, we also have pretty quick mortality. There's a lot of competition in the stand, which means not all the trees here are going to have the same chance to get all the resources. So they're all competing for the same amount of water, the same resources, the same light, and that's going to contribute to a lot of early mortality of these small trees, which continues to build that dead fuel loading. A lot of them fall, but a lot of them stay standing. So we have this really dried out material from the surface of this whole stand up into the canopy. And the trees that do fall, some of them get caught up. They drop all of their leaves, they drop all of their bark, and that accumulates at a pretty high rate down on the forest floor. And so we just have this immense amount of fuel, not even from the trees themselves, but all the litter and the duff and the leaves and the bark and the falling trees, and it all keeps compounding in this area. So this first phase is really focusing on removing a lot of the bark and removing a lot of those dead standing and the small diameter trees. That's going to take a lot of effort, and if we have any money left over at the end of this phase, we'll be looking at removing some of the larger trees, you know, the dead standing, that one's under 10. But any trees above 10 inches that are easily accessible from the road, that might be part of kind of these sprouting clumps where it makes more sense to take all of them. And we'll be able to kind of start getting into that second phase a little bit early if we can. Instead, this is a pilot, kind of in all senses of the word. And we don't know how far our dollars are going to stretch at this point, which is why we're starting small, to be able to expand that appropriately as we look for grants and outside funding.
Can I ask a question?
Of course,
it's something that I tell residents in San Anselmo, and maybe someone from Fire is better saying this than I am, but I always tell them that large trees typically aren't the issue. It's the ladder fuels and limbing them up, because oftentimes we get residents who want to cut down giant oaks because they're afraid of them, or other trees. I'm like, you need to just get rid of ladder fuels and limb up. And you kind of said that, but I just want to
let me expand on that.
Yeah.
That's the main point of what we're doing here. So all the material we're taking out is really to separate the material on the ground, those surface fuels, from the canopies. If we can keep fire out of the canopies, and it's on a windy day, that's where the threat of these firebrands being carried through the air really occurs. So if we can do our best to keep fire on the ground, and Mark mentioned, if they had the response to the fire when it was well spaced, both horizontally between trees, but also from the ground to the canopy. It's not easy work, but it makes it a lot simpler. And looking at the bigger picture is a lot more feasible from a firefighting standpoint. When we have that material removed. And so, just looking here, all the stringy bark that's hung up, in lieu of pruning, because eucalyptus doesn't have a whole lot of lower branches, removing bark from those lower portions of the bowl where they're hung up, that's going to be our pruning and our limbing up, essentially. Removing the built-up bark from the kind of the bases of the trees, and kind of in between the trees. But also taking out a lot of the non-native vegetation. We don't have a whole lot of it here, but in other portions of the project that we'll see, there's a ton of broom. Wherever there's sunlight, there's likely going to be broom, and so that's also going to be a maintenance issue going ahead that we'll need to account for. But it's pretty easy to visualize here, all those ladder fuels, and there's laddering from the base, climbing all the way up to the canopies, and that's going to be a big portion of what we're removing. I hope that clarifies a little bit more.
I'll just add that, bark is really interesting. I mean, as you walk by and you see oak trees that are kind of hanging on under there, the bark falls off and hangs on the oak branches like tinsel, from a 1980s Christmas tree. It is just creating ladder fuel like crazy. And so it's just really fascinating to take a look at all the fuel loading in these areas. Go ahead, sorry.
Who's the giant that you hired to tie these things up?
That was my question.
We climbed on top of all the built-up material.
You didn't climb up on top of his shoulders and send somebody else.
Thank you, Simon and Calvin. The poison oak and getting down into there. I directed. They're great.
The question, so I see that there, There's a bay tree here, looks like possibly a madrone and other bays that are less than 10. But I'm assuming you're giving you're going to leave the native trees that are less than 10 in hopes of that they may yet flourish, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
I just
our
want to make sure that
yes, yes. Our main approach with the entire project is to focus on eucalyptus. We'll have our hands full with that. We did do a primary inventory just to get a sense of how many eucalyptus are throughout the project, but native trees were also included in that. So our bays, our oaks, some buckeyes, and that's about it. There's really not a lot, but there's some. And so the idea with this removal is to preserve those trees. There's going to be a lot of moving parts, and so there might be some incidental losses, but that's part of it. But where we can preserve, and we're going to make an intentional effort to do so, native trees will maintain on the landscape with the hopes that those trees will be released. They'll have enough resources, light, water, other nutrients, to be able to flourish a little bit more and hopefully get some more natural regeneration. We'll see how that goes. Part of the monitoring is to also see what's coming up. Do we have more native trees, native shrubs, forbs, grasses coming up in this area? And if there are, that's wonderful. If there aren't, supplementing that with intentional plantings of native trees and native plants will be another phase down the line as we see what comes up.
I have one more question.
Keep them going.
You mentioned the eucalypts. They produce chemicals that suppress understory. Yeah, allelopathic. So as far as disposal of this stuff, the bark is covered with oils. These small trees with the leaves. I mean, is there concern about the allelopathic effect of the chips and disposal, and the fact that you may need to burn them instead of, or maybe take them to a bioenergy plant, but not spread them?
Yeah, so that's part of what we're looking at.
Okay.
But we've also, and maybe you want to chime in, we've also been in contact with East Bay Regional Parks, who's doing a lot of work similar to ours, but on an even larger scale. And they're at the point in their project where they're starting to see what's coming up after. They're a couple of years ahead of us. And I think it sounds like they are getting regeneration, both of invasive species. There's a big seed bank, but they're also getting native plants coming up as well. So I don't know if it's site to site. That's something we're all figuring out as well.
Yeah, so we asked them the same question. How is the So, air curtain burners, potential creation of biochar for, ag to use as needed, the pile burning, we'll broadcast, shipping and broadcasting, shipping and hauling, probably be all of the above at some point. In the immediate, just getting our feet under the ground, or under us, will be taking simple pathways for biomass utilization and biomass removal for the moment. And then we'll figure it out as we go. But I think there are some really interesting conversations to be had about biomass in this project.
There are eucalyptus chips the town of San Anselmo loves, and for our parks. Like if you actually go to our picnic areas, Creek Park, which is now closed, but we had them in there. We also had them in Hilldale Pocket Park. We have it at our new Jumpy House area because they also deter fleas and ticks and other things like that, the eucalyptus oils. So there's actually a great use for them where you want to use them in a picnic area too. So we do like them for certain park areas.
Yeah, that's great.
So in our Firewise guidelines, we're told that our narrow roads need to be cleared of broom in particular, but other things that can cause trouble, 10 feet horizontally from the edge of the asphalt. This sounds like perfect material for coating banks, both to reduce erosion, but also to keep down growth of stuff that we don't want there, that we have to go out and have broom pulling parties to clear up.
There's no ditches or kind of path for water.
They will wash away. Yeah, and maybe you can make some money off of it.
Good luck.
You need to offset costs.
I think there were a couple of other questions that were asked further up the hill about the pilot project specifically. What's that going to look like? How long will it take? Hours of operation, the kind of equipment, how's it going to all look and feel?
Sorry.
No, that's
Go ahead. Do you want to get closer?
Yeah, so our pilot project.
The whole project is like that.
Funds that were allocated for this current fiscal year. And to do that for July, we're looking for that sweet spot between kind of a dry period where we don't have a lot of rain, because we do want to be able to get into here without too much soil compaction and other erosion issues. We don't want to contribute to that. So finding a time when we don't have a lot of rain forecasted, but in combination with getting our contracting all lined out is kind of that sweet spot. Optimistically, I'm always an optimist. It's how we push these projects forward. We're hoping for March, but maybe April, maybe May, but we will be starting before July, and aiming to get this entirety of the 10 acres done before then. We will be very transparent about when that will be happening. There's going to be a lot more noise than people are used to. It's an active operation, so maybe more frequent direct mailers, or maybe even walking throughout the neighborhood and dropping things off. It sounds like that's the way people want to be reached within the neighborhood, and we want people to know. We don't want this to be a surprise. So as soon as we find out when we can start, we'll start getting the word out.
And I want to make a pitch for, if you are a neighbor and you have neighbors who are interested and who want to, meet with us, potentially talk about the project. Maybe, a few of us can meet some of your neighbors at the project site, talk about it, answer questions. Please make sure, maybe put an asterisk next to your name, because we really want to work with the neighbors. It ends up logistically just being tough to reach neighbors other than walking with flyers. And we've done that with projects. And it may be that we need to do that with this one too. But please do come up to me and make sure I have your information and your email address, that I can read it. Maybe put an asterisk next to your name if you want more outreach.
A little bit about when we'll start. When we do start, we'll be working Monday through Friday, typical business hours. I don't really want a whole lot of traffic going by during school hours as well, so we need to coordinate with the contractor to minimize traffic within the neighborhood at that point. There's a few conditions where we won't work, when it's raining or when soil conditions are a little bit too wet, to do that responsibly. Noise ordinances, yes. Yes, all this is in the environmental compliance document as well, but maybe we need kind of a quick fact sheet of what people can expect. We're not in fire season yet, so most of this is around the wet weather constraints, but as we get into the warmer weather season, we won't be working on red flag days, or we'll have modified operations that's appropriate. Rain, fire weather, wind. Oh, and because we're in an active cemetery, we'll be coordinating with the cemetery around their burials. We won't be working during those services as well.
Yeah, we also have archaeologists helping advise where there are some hidden graves here.
There's a lot out there.
Yeah. So we have archaeologists.
I'm kind of surprised about the timing, because mean, this is during the bird nesting season. How are you gonna deal with, nesting birds?
Yes. Surveys, lots of surveys.
Lots of
and if they're
surveys.
nesting birds, then we won't work in that area. I spent about 20 years doing nesting bird surveys for field work. It's tough work, but you can do it. And if they're in it, I mean, one of the big limiting factors will be the large trees and potential raptor nests. So we'll see how it goes during the nesting season. You know, we'll see.
So we're very adaptable, and we'll take it as it comes, and it's important to be able to start this project, and if there's constraints that pop up, biologically, erosion issues, we'll adapt and move forward with that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time we've been off work for that. It won't be the last.
Are there other questions that I missed, or that you want more explanation or clarification on?
So when you show the map that has the whole, this one, the 10 acres is
this bright blue.
So the bright blue is the starter area.
Yes, so that, including some of the burial lawns here, is 10.3 acres. Obviously no work has been done there. So about just under 10 acres of treatment area. Anything else? We can conclude our tour for anyone who wants to or is able to. I think it is dry enough to walk down the path here, and that's really a chance to kind of get in the middle of the unit and really see what this looks like from the interior. We can talk about some of the other constraints with kind of the burial ground tucked in the unit and how we're going to approach that. And this is also the unit that we've been talking about doing pile burns and trying that approach as well, so we can talk more about that. That's fine as well.
And I want to note that at MWPA's website, there is a lot of information about this project. We'll be keeping it updated with maps and other resources, future field trips and things like that. So please do check out our website, and I can help you navigate that if needed. Fact sheets, Emily has a fact sheet that's handing out right now. Thank you. Lots of resources. We've got some presentations about the project as well, so feel free to circulate that. I just want to say that projects like this are only possible because voters voted into effect Measure C. These things, so much time and energy, so many meetings, months of planning and coordination, tons of environmental studies, lots of experts out in the field, biologists, wildlife biologists, botanists, geologists. So many people have been involved in this project, so many different partners, Marin County Parks and Open Space, Town of San Anselmo, Ross Valley Fire, the Mount Tam Cemetery, Cedars of Marin, and San Wildfire, of course, and MWPA. I mean, all of this work is pretty gargantuan, and this is just one of the projects where we're doing this level of coordination. And so big thank you to Marin County residents who decided to vote that tax measure into place to make big things happen. So we're doing our best to balance all the ecological and the fire risk and the fire safety needs to do some really pretty incredible work. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you.
As part of the group to help get this thing started,
I'll be saving this, and if you want me to recirculate it with your community members so that more people could effectively be at the field trip. Yeah.
everything is developed.
Well, I've been told that I can save this. Okay. I'm not actually sure how to do that, but we'll figure it out.
So you post it on the site with a link that people can get to? So.
Yeah, we're gonna trim it. We're gonna post it on like our social media too, and trim down versions, little snippets. Yeah.
Challenges. I'm not a huge social media person, so I'm not
And it'll
very
be on
much
our
there.
website. Yeah. I'm also not really.
I've never done Facebook. I worked on phone systems for Sutter Health, and anytime I was not at a computer for work, I didn't want to have anything to do.
I totally get you.
The other ones are just
Anybody here that needs a ride down the hill? Wave your hand if you want to ride down the hill.
Do we go this way?
If you need a ride,
I work for San Anselmo.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
This is just a little
Oh, so you live in San Anselmo? Yeah.
This is a loop road.
Yeah, it goes right back to
My sister lives in San Anselmo.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Are we done?
No, we're still going. I was gonna do a little, yeah, for the people who can't see how insane the project is from right here. We're gonna go into the belly of the beast.
Are you going to post this by chance? I would like to.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, we're gonna cut it down into like the important pieces and post it with our help from Fire Safe Marin, and then we'll put it on the website too. Sorry, Quinn.
My Firewise group is going to say, so what happened?
So we got poison oak and eucalyptus bark everywhere. I don't know if you were able to hear it earlier, but the thing about these strands of eucalyptus bark is that they make for pretty, as far as firebrands and embers go, there's a much higher quantity of them in eucalyptus forests than other types of forests. And the position of this project makes it so that the radius that these flaming bits of bark could travel, within that radius. Bye, Stephen. There's an immense amount of development, houses, communities, business districts. I mean, this is right above the hub in San Anselmo. And that's another strategic part of the placement of this project. The hub, as many of you know, is one of the most highly trafficked corridors in all of Marin. And where there is a lot of traffic, there's higher risk of ignition. So, extremely high traffic area at the base of a steep slope dominated by overgrown eucalyptus. That's kind of positioned right in the heart of the county. It's pretty important that we mitigate some of these hazards. And then the other element of it, the Diablo winds. This is a pretty exposed, or parts of the project are pretty exposed to winds, both, typical coastal winds and then also seasonal Diablo winds. So depending on the season, you could have gusts blowing pretty hard in either direction, west or east, blowing all of these flaming bits. Ugh. Oh, sounds like the group is actually coming and joining us now. So the other day we were out here monitoring some of these fuels, and we have, I think, 8 or 9 different plots where we were mostly monitoring the amount of surface fuels. This stuff, twigs, branches up to 8 inches. There's our fearless project leader, manager. Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
That's a muddy dog.
Oh, thank you. That is a muddy dog. You guys scanning for fire suppression stuff?
Yeah, we actually have a project that's just about to break ground around
Yeah, I've been
here,
reading about
so,
it.
Yeah.
You came just in time.
Yeah.
If you want to join the tail end of the field trip.
No, it's great to hear that you guys can address this, because as neighbors, we're always worried about
We'll be there in like
all the eucalyptus and the burn capacity. So good job. So great to hear the news, right?
Awesome. Good to hear that you're supportive. This is the.
Man, I just drove to the bottom of it. I'm like, I need to show you something. I want to fix some drainage down here. What are you doing? Floods down here all the time.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine, yeah. Yeah, this is crazy.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what eucalyptus resprouts can do.
for numerous reasons, but there's actually like oftentimes there's these things called bald wasp nests. They're in the ground.
Really?
Yeah. And they'll just keep coming up.
Glad we didn't know about that before before we did all the monitoring. Did you get to tour the site much while you were writing the PSA?
No, we had biologists come out and they did actually pretty good both reconnaissance survey and then also did a fair amount of like pre-work surveys. But and then the cultural specialist came out and looked for all of the headstones. But I did not. I came just to do the outside. I didn't get to do sort of the nitty gritty.
Yeah.